The Lantern House. Section 1, Arrival. Rain hammered the windshield like nails tapping a coffin lid. Clara tightened her grip on the steering wheel, peering through the wipers as they smeared the shadows outside. The GPS had long given up trying to find the remote road she'd turned onto an hour ago. Her phone lay lifeless in the passenger seat, no signal, no way to call anyone if she got stuck. The road curved sharply, and there it was, sitting atop the hill like a patient creature. The house. It looked older than the land around it, with its steep, slate roof and thin tower curling out of the north wing. A single window in that tower glowed yellow, like a lidless eye waiting. Clara parked the car just beyond the gate, which hung crooked on its rusted hinges. The place wasn't exactly what she expected when she signed up for a writer's retreat in a scenic, secluded home, but she'd paid up front and had nowhere else to go. She dragged her suitcase through the gravel, wincing as the wheels caught on every stone. The gate creaked open on its own, as if welcoming her. The house loomed taller as she approached, its shutters shivering in the wind. She paused at the base of the stairs leading to the front porch. "Let's just get through the week," she muttered. The door was already slightly ajar. She knocked, though no one answered. When she pushed it open, the warmth surprised her. Fire crackled somewhere inside. The air smelled like old wood, wax, and faint lavender. "Hello?" Clara called out. "Welcome," said a voice, low and composed, but strangely without direction. She stepped inside, heart pounding harder than it should have. The door closed behind her with a quiet thud. Standing in the foyer was a man dressed in black. Tall, gaunt, with skin so pale it seemed dusted with frost. He smiled politely, but his eyes didn't. "You must be Clara." "I'm Elias, the caretaker." "Hi," Clara said, unsure whether to shake his hand. He didn't offer it. The fire's lit in the study. "You'll be sleeping in the south room. Breakfast is at 7. The house is old, don't wander too far tonight." "Is there anyone else here?" His smile twitched. "There always is." Section 2, the south room. The stairs creaked under Clara's weight as she followed Elias down the long hallway. The walls were paneled in dark walnut, lit only by wall sconces with flame-shaped bulbs. Faintly, she could hear the wind whistling through gaps in the old wood, like distant voices trying to get in. Elias stopped in front of a tall door with peeling green paint. "Your room," he said, pressing it open. Clara stepped inside, trying not to show her unease. The room was larger than expected, with a tall ceiling and antique furniture that looked like it had never been moved. A four-poster bed sat against the far wall, draped in a dusty lace canopy. A writing desk stood by the window, its surface clean, with a single unlit lantern placed neatly in the center. She approached it. "No lamps?" "The power fails often," Elias said. "Use the lantern if you wake. The matches are in the drawer." Clara looked down, finding a small tin box of long matches. "Thanks. If you hear footsteps in the hall," he added casually, "it's likely the pipes. Or dreams. The house does that." She blinked. "Dreams?" He turned away. "Rest well." The door shut with a soft click. Clara stood there, suddenly more aware of how far from home she was. The room smelled of linen and thyme, something like dried flowers mixed with dust. She pulled her suitcase up onto the bed and began to unpack. The silence was thick, broken only by the occasional groan of the old house settling. After changing into her nightclothes, she climbed into bed and pulled the heavy quilt to her chin. It was quiet again. Uncomfortably quiet. Then, the sound came. A slow, deliberate creaking in the hallway. Step. Step. Pause. Clara froze. Her eyes darted to the door. The handle didn't turn, but the floorboards just beyond it creaked again. Step. Step. Silence. She held her breath, hand reaching for the matches on the nightstand. She debated lighting the lantern. But then, the handle jiggled, just once. Not hard. Just enough to let her know something was there. And then, it was gone. Section 3, Morning Light. Clara awoke to the sound of soft tapping. Rain still murmured against the windows, and pale morning light filtered through the thin curtains. She sat up, disoriented, trying to shake off the memory of the night before. The tapping continued, 3 slow knocks. Not on her door. On the window. She turned. The second-story window overlooked the overgrown side yard, where brambles curled around the stone foundation. But there, just behind the misted glass, were faint fingerprints. 5 of them. Small, as if from a child's hand. Clara moved toward the window cautiously. When she reached it, there was nothing outside. No one on the lawn. Just fog. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, measuring it. The other handprint was smaller, narrow fingers, smudged at the edges. It hadn't come from inside. A shiver ran down her spine. She dressed quickly and made her way downstairs. The house was dim despite the time of day. She found Elias in the kitchen, already preparing breakfast. The smell of eggs and toasted bread clashed with the eerie stillness of the halls. "Morning," she said, trying to sound normal. Elias glanced over his shoulder. "Sleep well?" "Fine," she lied. "I thought I heard something last night." Footsteps. And this morning, there were fingerprints on the window. He didn't stop whisking. "The house is old," he said again. "And children used to live here. Sometimes their presence lingers." Clara stared at him. "Presence?" He smiled faintly. "Don't worry. They mean no harm. Mostly." She opened her mouth, closed it. "How long have you worked here?" "A long time." "Do you live here alone?" His hands stilled. He turned and looked at her fully. "No one ever lives here alone." Section 4, The Locked Door. Clara knelt, ear nearly pressed to the locked door, breath caught in her throat. The sound, if it had even been there, was gone now. She reached for the doorknob out of habit, half expecting it to rattle open under her hand. It didn't. The knob was ice cold, almost metallic, and firmly locked. She stepped back. Something about the symbols etched into the wood unsettled her, circles within circles, thin vertical lines intersecting where the rings overlapped. They weren't decorative. They felt deliberate. She made a note to ask Elias about the door, but the thought of another one of his cryptic answers drained her enthusiasm. Later, she returned to her room to write. After all, that's why she was here. But as she sat at the desk and opened her laptop, the screen flickered. It refused to start, then abruptly powered off again. Dead. Just like her phone. She looked to the lantern Elias had given her. It sat quiet, glass smudged with age. Her fingers traced the brass handle. Old but real. Maybe it was the only dependable thing in the house. Giving up on the laptop, Clara pulled out a leather notebook and pen. The words came slow. A creeping unease had settled in the back of her skull, like a headache made of static. It was the house. Its stillness. Its listening. From the hall came another creak. She froze, pen hovering over the page. It was soft, barely there, but persistent. Someone walking again. She stood and pressed her ear to the door. Silence. She cracked it open. The hallway was empty, though the air was colder than before. Then she noticed it, on the floor, just at the edge of the rug. A toy. It was a small wooden horse, old and hand-painted. It hadn't been there earlier. She picked it up. The paint was chipped, the wood smooth from handling. The word Eli was carved crudely into the underside. She turned slowly toward the direction of the locked door. Behind it, the silence thickened. Section 5, The Whispering Study. That evening, Clara sat in the study near the fire. The warmth didn't quite reach her skin. Her notebook rested on her lap, but she hadn't written in over an hour. Her thoughts kept circling the door, the toy horse, the fingerprints. The air in the study felt too still, like it was waiting. Books lined the shelves from floor to ceiling, most of them old and cracked, their spines faded. One caught her eye. A thick volume tucked sideways among the rest. She pulled it free. It was a leather-bound journal, untitled. The first page was dated 1889, and the name written in sweeping ink read, Eleanor Winslow. Clara turned a few pages. Eleanor's handwriting was beautiful, loops and curls, each word precise. But the content. I saw her again at the top of the stairs. She never speaks, only watches. Elias says not to engage. I fear I already have. Clara froze. The fire popped loudly behind her. She turned another page. They think I'm mad. But I saw the child's hand in the ash. I saw her shadow move when nothing else did. I think the house listens. I think the house remembers us. The final entry had only 3 words, written in a frantic scrawl. Do not open. Below that, a rough sketch, circles inside circles. The same symbols as on the locked door. Clara looked up, suddenly aware of a whisper, not a sound exactly, more like a thought pushing through her own. She wasn't alone in the study. She stood and turned slowly toward the fire. There, standing in the far corner, was a little girl in a white nightgown. Pale. Still. Eyes dark as coal. And smiling. Section 6, The Girl by the Fire. Clara didn't move. The child stood motionless, her hands at her sides, white nightgown swaying gently as if in a breeze Clara couldn't feel. Her skin was pale, waxy, almost translucent. The fire cast flickering shadows across the room, but none of them belonged to the girl. Who are you? Clara asked, her voice barely a whisper. No response. The girl's head tilted slowly to the side, too slowly. Her eyes didn't blink. Didn't move. Just watched. Then, she opened her mouth. No sound came out. Clara stepped backward until the edge of the writing desk caught her thigh. She blinked, and the girl was gone. As if she'd never been there. Only the flames in the hearth remained, crackling softly. Clara ran back to her room. She locked the door, though she wasn't sure it would matter. She sat on the bed for a long time, the little wooden horse still clutched in one hand. Eventually, she lay down, but sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it was thick and dreamless, like sinking into cold clay. Section 7. The Cradle Room. The next morning, Clara ventured upstairs. She hadn't explored the 3rd floor yet, but something pulled her, an intuition she couldn't explain. The 3rd floor hallway was darker, narrower. Windows were scarce, and the wallpaper peeled like drying skin. She moved slowly, unsure what she was even looking for. Halfway down the hall, she found it, a door slightly ajar. Inside was a nursery. An old one. A wooden cradle sat in the center of the room, surrounded by moth-eaten toys and a rocking chair pushed into a corner. Dust coated everything. The air smelled like mildew and stale perfume. She stepped inside. The cradle rocked once. Clara froze. There was nothing inside it. No breeze. No window open. The rocking stopped. Then a faint sound, humming. A lullaby, off-key, from behind the chair. She edged closer, the floor groaning beneath her steps. "Hello?" she called, voice trembling. The humming stopped. She reached out with one hand and pushed the chair. Nothing behind it. No one in the room. But on the back of the chair was a name carved into the wood. Eleanor. The same name from the journal. Section 8, Elias Knows. Back downstairs, Clara found Elias sitting in the library, leafing through an old book as if the house weren't soaked in nightmares. She didn't wait for pleasantries. Who was Eleanor Winslow? He didn't look up. She lived here. I found her journal. Upstairs. And the nursery, why does it look like it hasn't been touched in 100 years? Because it hasn't. Clara waited. He didn't elaborate. You said people used to live here. What happened to them? Elias finally closed the book. The house absorbs things. People. Memories. Regrets. Some linger longer than others. That girl. The one in white. Is she Eleanor's daughter? She was. Clara stared at him. Was? Elias stood slowly. You're safer if you don't try to understand it. This house doesn't care for logic. He stepped past her toward the hallway, then paused. You should leave the third floor alone. Section 9, Midnight Knock. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay with the lantern lit beside her bed, casting shadows across the high ceiling. Every sound felt louder. Every creak, every groan. Then came the knock. Not on the window this time. On the door. 3 precise knocks. Clara sat up, heart thudding. She waited. Silence. Then again, knock. 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 Slow. Patient. She stood, her feet bare on the cold floor, and approached the door. Who's there? No answer. She gripped the handle, hesitant. Another knock, this time faster. Urgent. Clara flung the door open. Nothing there. The hallway was dark and empty. But something was different. A smell, maybe, like damp earth and rust. And down the hall, she saw it. The locked door. It was open. Section 10, The Room Beyond. She should have turned back. She should have slammed her own door and crawled into bed. But instead, Clara walked toward the open door at the end of the hall. The symbols carved into it glowed faintly, as if touched by moonlight. The air was colder here, wet, heavy. Inside was darkness. She struck a match and lit the lantern. Its golden glow stretched only a few feet in, illuminating stone walls and a spiral staircase descending into the earth. A staircase that should not exist. She looked back once, toward the warm light of her room. Then she stepped inside. The stairs creaked as she descended. Each breath echoed. The air changed, damp and ancient, like water trapped in stone. At the bottom was a chamber. Circular. Carved entirely from rock. Strange murals covered the walls, people standing in rows, eyes hollow, mouths stitched shut. In the center of the room was a well. And beside the well, a mirror. Not hanging. Not framed. Floating. The surface rippled like water, but reflected nothing at all. And then, Clara's lantern flickered. Something moved in the mirror. Section 11, The Mirror. The mirror pulsed. Not with light, but with a sensation. Something deep and low, like a heartbeat in the walls. Clara stepped closer, the lantern trembling in her hand. Its reflection never appeared in the glass. Neither did hers. She reached out, one finger hovering just inches from the surface. The moment her skin touched it, cold surged through her bones. Her vision blurred, her ears filled with a rushing sound, like wind, or whispers underwater. Then everything stopped. The chamber was gone. She stood now in a long hallway. Wood panels, golden light, soft carpet beneath her feet. A familiar scent, lavender, smoke, and ink. It was the house. But not how she knew it. It was clean. Lived in. Voices murmured from another room, soft, indistinct. A woman laughed. A child hummed. Clara turned, heart pounding. She was watching a memory. And in the mirror's reflection beside her, was Eleanor Winslow. Section 12, Through Her Eyes. Clara couldn't move, only watch. Eleanor walked the hallway with a notebook in hand, pausing to glance out a tall window. Her dark hair was pinned tightly, her dress crisp and pressed. She looked tired. Haunted. She whispered something Clara couldn't hear, then entered the nursery. Inside, a small girl with black curls sat on the floor surrounded by blocks. She looked up and smiled. "Sing for me, Mama," she said. Eleanor's lips moved, but no sound came. Her face was drawn, her eyes red. She knelt and touched the girl's hand. Suddenly, shouting. A man's voice, from below. Harsh. Angry. Eleanor scooped up the child and fled the room. Clara followed, not by choice, but as though pulled on a thread. Downstairs, a man waited by the fireplace. Tall. Stern. His face red with fury. "You opened it," he growled. "I had to know," Eleanor said. "She's awake now," he hissed. "The girl sees her. The house is listening." Clara gasped. The man turned, looked directly at her. The memory shattered. Section 13, Return to the chamber. Clara fell backward, landing hard on the stone floor. The mirror rippled one last time and turned solid. Her lantern flickered back to life, casting jagged shadows. The air pressed in, thick with weight and silence. Her hands trembled as she stood. She turned away from the mirror and started back toward the stairs, but froze. The well. Something was rising. A sound like wet fabric sliding across stone. She inched toward it, lantern held high. Two pale fingers curled over the edge. Then a second hand. The top of a head emerged, long black hair dripping, clinging to waxy skin. Clara stumbled back, nearly dropping the lantern. The face that followed, was the girl. But her eyes were hollow now. Dark pits. Her mouth stitched shut with thread. Clara turned and ran, up the stairs, through the doorway, into the hall. The door slammed shut behind her. Locked. Section 14, The House Awakens. Clara didn't sleep. She sat in her bed with the lantern burning, journal open beside her. She scrawled down everything. The mirror, the memory, the stitched girl in the well. Her hands shook as she wrote. The house creaked, breathed, shifted. At some point, she realized something had changed in the air. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was alert. It was watching. In the morning, she found Elias waiting in the kitchen. "You went through the door." Clara didn't answer. "She showed you the memory. The girl, the mirror." "Yes." Clara swallowed. "She's trapped." Elias nodded slowly. "They both are." "Who?" "The child, and the thing pretending to be her." Eleanor tried to separate them. But the house wouldn't let her. "It wants them both." Clara's voice trembled. "What is it?" Elias looked toward the tower. "Something old. Something buried here long before the house was built. It needs a vessel. A voice." He looked back at her. "It wants you." Section 15, Tower of Ash. Clara avoided the tower. She wandered the lower levels instead, trying to map the hallways, though they seemed to change subtly when she wasn't looking. Paintings moved. Rugs curled into symbols. The windows no longer showed the outside. Still, the tower called to her. That night, she dreamed of ash falling through the sky. She stood at the base of the tower, watching smoke pour from the top window. A woman screamed above her, "Eleanor." Clara climbed. Step after step, the stairs giving way beneath her feet, until she reached a small wooden door. The heat was unbearable. She pushed it open. Inside, the room was full of soot. Blackened walls. Burned floorboards. In the center, a cradle, charred. And beside it, a figure. Eleanor. Her face melted, hollow, yet weeping. "She's coming," she whispered. Then the dream collapsed into smoke. Clara woke choking.